grand, and I'm so happy to be here. I've
Oh,
really, really been missing Ireland over the past few weeks, and I wish I could come over soon. But until that happens, I'm super delighted to
well,
take part.
exactly. And if it's not this year, maybe you'll come to our festival next year. So it's in September, the 17th to the 19th, and it starts with Culture Night in Ireland.
Oh,
So
what?
we knit it in with that. In the meantime, it's been too long, Isabel, since I've heard you play,
I
you
know.
know, and I cannot wait to hear you now. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm just going to let you tell us a beautiful story, or sing us a song, or play us the harp. Accomplished woman.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for inviting me. As I said, I'm super happy to be here tonight. And I have a song and no, a story and a tune for you. Here in Switzerland, we are approaching a special day. On Sunday, it's our national holiday. And so, all over the country, there will be cultural events. And in my town as well, there's a huge program. And I do a storytelling session on Swiss folk and fairy tales. And so, while I was designing this program, I read tons of Swiss folk and fairy tales, and I'm going to tell you one tonight. And that story takes us to the southernmost part of Switzerland, which is called Ticino. And those of you who have perchance been there will know that it's an area of outstanding, beautiful extremes. You'll have the rugged mountains and the deep valleys and the crystal clear rivers coursing through that valleys, but also the gentle, enchanting pastures. And this whole landscape is dotted with villages here and there. And you'll also have the odd single cottage tucked away in the most unlikely of places. And now, a long time ago, there lived a young man, and his name was Lucio. Lucio lived with his mother, and they had what we would call a simple, modest life. They owned nothing but their cottage and a cow and a few scraggly goats. But they were happy. They were content. And Lucio, he carried the sunshine in his heart. He always had a tune on his lips and a kind word for each creature that passed his way. And every morning he would get up at the crack of dawn, take the cow and the goats, lead them to a pasture, and lay down in the soft green grass and watch the sun journey across the sky while the animals had their fill. Now, one morning, he had just led the creatures to the pasture when he spotted a delightful little spot where he wanted to lay down. So he sat down in the grass and, with a sigh, he let himself fall back and ouch! He hit his head on something hard that turned out to be a small jug made from clay with two handles and closed with a stopper. Well, what am I going to do with a jug? He thought as he rubbed the sore spot on his head. If it had been a cooking pot, I would have had some use for it. Or if the jug had been filled with wine, but just a jug, no. He threw it back down on the ground and, as if by magic, the stopper came loose and a crimson liquid gurgled into the grass. Lucio was surprised. He picked up the jug, he took a sip, and it was the sweetest wine he had ever tasted, much better than the vinegar that the innkeeper offered him for dear coins on market day. He was delighted. He took the jug and brought it back to his mother, and there was enough for himself and his mother for dinner, and there was even some wine left in the jug when he filled his flask the next morning when he headed out again. In the evening, he came back. His mother put the supper on the table. There was soup and there was salad, and Lucio, he took a bite of the salad and pulled a face. Mother, he said, did you not put any oil on the salad? It's so dry. Well, Lucio, his mother sighed. I did put the last bit of oil that we had on the salad, but it is so expensive. We just cannot afford to buy any more. You're right, he said. And he reached for the jug of wine and looked at it, saying, well, I had better found the jug filled with oil. But what are you going to do? It is what it is. Pulled the stopper, took a sip and spat it all over the table. Because what he had in his mouth was not wine, it was oil. It was the silkiest, most savory oil that he had ever tasted. Lucio looked at the jug, thought for a moment and said, Mother, let me try something. And he said, Jug, fill yourself with wine. He waited for a moment. He took a small sip, and it was filled with wine. And so Lucio and his mother had as much wine and as much oil as they needed. And if this were a just happy story, it would be over here. But it's not. Some days passed. They had oil, they had wine. And one evening, Lucio came home and he said, Mother, let me try something. He took the jug and he said, Jug, fill yourself with gold. He waited for a moment, pulled the stopper, tipped the jug, and pouring out of the jug came heaps and heaps and heaps of gold pieces. Lucio's eyes grew wide as they gleamed and glimmered in the light of the setting sun that came in through the window, and he leapt up and he closed the curtains and he said, Mother, what if someone saw us? What if someone saw that we have come into such a fortune? Let's put it away. Let's bury it in the cellar. Quick, wrap up the gold while I go into the cellar and dig a hole. And that's what they did. They buried the treasure. But with the treasure, Lucio also buried his happiness, his lightness, the sunshine in his heart. Because from that moment onwards, he was obsessed with worry that someone might have found out that they've come into riches. So while before he would be up at the crack of dawn and out the door with the first rays of sunlight with the animals, he would stall, always on the lookout for thieves that might come to his house. And he would not go into the pasture until the goat would grab him by the shirt and basically drag him there. And on the way, he had no eyes, no ear for the beauty that surrounded him. His mind was filled with images of his house raided, his mother hurt, his treasure gone. And he would wait just until the animals had eaten enough and then herd them back home. And even when he was at home, his gaze would flick back and forth to the window and to the door, and he would jump at the sound of every cat running across the roof. And at night, he could barely sleep. And the day came when he refused to leave the house. And then his mother knew she had to do something. So she waited until he had gone to bed that night. And when he saw that her son had fallen into a deep, albeit fitful sleep, she went down to the cellar. She unearthed the treasure. She took the jug, pulled the stopper, and piece by golden piece, she filled treasure back into the jug. And when she had put in the very last piece of gleaming gold, she closed it with the stopper and said, Jug, fill yourself with wine. She waited for another moment, opened the stopper, and the jug was filled with wine once more. She waited until morning, And at the crack of dawn, she went to wake up her son and she said, "Son, the day has broken. Take the animals, go out to the pastures." And he said, "But mother, what about the treasure? What about the thieves? Who will protect you?" "Oh, my son," she said, and tucked a strand of his hair behind his ear. "It was only a dream." And Lucio, he understood. He gave his mother a hug. He got up and he went to the stables. He got the cow, he got the scraggly goats, and he led them to the pasture. On the way, he whistled with the birds and he smiled at squirrels that ran across the path. And out there on the pasture, he lay down into the soft green grass, looked up to the sky, and the sunshine was shining in his heart once again.
Oh, wow, that was just gorgeous. Thank you, Isabel. Don't be a stranger. Please come again. Next month we have Liz Weir, and I know you two are great friends.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah,
Oh,
so
thank
come
you.
back. Mwah. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you again soon because I'm sure you'll be a very frequent visitor after